Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. I have a very special first-time guest. We have Eric Vincent, Detroit Pistons beat reporter from ClutchPoints.com. Eric, what's going on, man?
Pleasure to be here, Anthony. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
Good. I'm happy that you decided to come on the podcast. I've actually wanted to have you on the podcast for quite some time, but it's just like my scheduling is just like all over the place, having like 3-4 jobs, and it's just like, oh, maybe I'll have him on next week, maybe next week, maybe next week. Like 4 months later, I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna invite him on because I see your tweets, I read your articles over at Clutch Points, which I like, by the way. And
Thanks, man.
kind of like transitioning into that, I want to give you the floor. Anytime I have a guest on, I want you to plug yourself, man. I go for it, like where people can follow you, where they can read your articles. I know I saw earlier that you were filling in at is it Detroit Sports Rap Radio?
Yeah. AM 1270. That's the first African American owned and talent sports radio station in America. So I've been working with them for a lot on Sundays, 10 a.m. to 12. If you got time, check us out. And of course, yeah, you can hit me up on Clutch Points. You know, I cover the Pistons, do some Lions articles as well. Detroit, everything as you see back here, man. So yeah, ClutchPoints.com. Hit me up on my social media at I am Eric Vincent. I'll link everything there. And I'm excited, man. I've been a big fan of yours for a while. I love the show. We got a lot to get into. I'm really excited to be here. This should be fun.
Yeah, same here, man. We do have a lot to get into, and it's so funny. Like, I was telling my buddy, I was like, "Yeah," I said, "I'm having Eric on." He's like, he works for Clutch Points, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, you remember that Christian Wood Clutch Points COVID picture?" I was like, "Oh man, that was an all timer."
Yeah. Oh,
Sometimes
yeah, that was
sometimes
before I
they've been
got
doing
there, but I do
extra.
remember that. Yeah, they be going above and beyond with the pictures. I can't lie.
Like, if you guys have a minute that are watching, like, just I'm sure it's still up there. Just look Christian Wood COVID and like the graphic design and Photoshop they made, man. Like, I remember doing COVID and seeing that. Like, I was sad that he got COVID at the time because we didn't know what the disease was, but like I was actually like crying because I was laughing so
Right.
hard. I was just like, yo, what is that? But
I was not prepared. Like the first few images they put on, I'm like, oh, that's what we're doing. Like it's just like the eyes. And then I look back, I saw the COVID one. Actually, after I got hired, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, we're going hard with this one. I like it. That's cool.
yeah, shout out to Clutch Points, man. Great people over there. I know they tried to get me to work over there for a couple of years, but just couldn't get it going. Too busy. But like, hey, man, love their content. Love what you guys do over there at Pistons Nation, all that good stuff. But let's get into some Pistons talk. We have a couple of new coaches, assistant coaches, and Luke Walton and Kevin Burlinson, who I think more people are probably going to be excited about because it's Nate Burlinson's older brother. But what was your reaction to seeing the news this week that they're hiring Luke Walton and Kevin Burlinson?
Yeah, this is something I had my ears to the ground on for a while. Like I was, obviously when a new regime comes in, it's always interesting to see who they want to bring in with them. So I was definitely interested to see who JB and the crew were going to bring on. Wasn't really expecting these names at all. I do know Luke has his ties with him from coaching back with the Cavs as his assistant. He obviously has his time as a head coach, doing what he's done with the Lakers, Sacramento. He kind of worked with similar timelines because I know they were like younger teams when he was their head coach. So it kind of makes sense that he's filled in and was called on for the responsibility for the Pistons. So I was a little shocked. I know the jokes and the punchlines that go on about Luke Walton's name. But I understand it. It makes sense based on what he's done, especially when he added Sidney Lowe to the coaching staff as well. Kevin Burleson as well, another interesting hire. G League coach for the Rockets, has familiarity with the Timberwolves and the Grizzlies, I want to say. It makes sense. I like it. I like the way that the guys that they're bringing in, they're younger. They probably can relate to younger players a little bit better, kind of the way Jared Jack does, which is why I'm really happy he's still on staff. I think they're bringing in the right guys, and I'm again, I don't know if I'm in love with the hires, but they make sense. And so far, I'm okay with that being the baseline for right now.
I was just kind of thinking about it. Like, I think Sidney Lowe is probably the oldest coach because if you kind of look at their age, like JB Bickerstaff's 45, Luke's in his 40s, They're bringing in younger guys, which I like because I think they'll be able to relate to them more on a not saying like Monty and other coaches before couldn't relate to them, but I think if you got a guy a little bit younger that's played the game before, like you mentioned, like Jared Jack. I did digging on Kevin Burlinson, and the more digging I did, the more stuff I found. Like, I did not know that he played for the Charlotte Bobcats. Did not know that he played for JB Bickerstaff's dad. Like the more I dug and did a deep dive on him, like the more stuff I found. Which I think anytime you like get these assistant coaches, you don't know if they're going to be good or not. It's just kind of like a crapshoot, but you do find a lot of interesting stuff out there.
Yeah, again, they're coming with the history that they have. It makes sense for the kind of names that they're pulling. And like you just talked about Monty Williams, he seemed like I remember when he first got hired, I talked to a lot of people in the franchise, and they said, he's really like hammering down with like a no nonsense type of mentality, and like he's really making sure that things are strict and like serious, which I understand coming off the history that the Pistons have had. But at the same time, when you're working with younger players and they're maybe not super familiar with the history of the team, and they're not trying to repeat that, they're trying to make their own waves, it kind of helps to loosen things up and find ways to relate to them. And I feel like this is really the best way to do it. We're kind of seeing it with the Lions on the other side of football-wise, and I just think having that relatability really serves a lot. And I don't really think Monty had that with the people that he had in place, especially with him in his own.
I mean, I heard a lot of crazy Monty stories that I'm not gonna like repeat on this podcast because I'm not trying to get canceled and I never know who's watching.
Right.
But maybe that'll be some like after dark podcast stuff. I don't know, but no shade at Monty, but some of the stuff like I heard, I was like, dude, like no way that's true. But I think JB bringing in his staff, and a lot of people had questions about Steven Silos. I read that he's no longer with the team. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's not there anymore. They decided to move on. I think he was supposed to be like their defensive, like minded anchor coach, and that just wasn't working at all. So he was a choice strictly by Monty, and they did a good job clearing that. But again, I'm really, really happy with Jared Jack's thing, especially as the summer league coach. Like even just the like challenge he had on that third play, Monty was never challenging anything. So like that alone shows me that they're trying to go in a different direction. So I think they're doing a good job of what they have in place.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are just like, Jared Jack coached Sar Thompson. I know it's just like way off topic. Like Jared Jack, like used Sar Thompson in way creative more ways than we saw Monty use him. And I know this isn't us trying to bash Monty. It's just Jared Jack seems like one day he will be an NBA coach because he's played the point guard position, and a lot of former point guards are usually pretty good NBA head coaches. I mean, you just had Jason Kidd in the NBA Finals, and he was a really good point guard. But I'm happy Jared Jack is staying. To your point, I know he had a really tight relationship from what I've heard with Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham really loves Jared Jack, so
absolutely.
I think it's good to see that some former coaches are staying. Like I saw the other day that Jalen Duren was working out with I don't know if he's still with the organization, Mark Bryant, the center's coach, but I heard JD really likes Mark Bryant. Even Isaiah Stewart, they really love him as a coach.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time doing pregame drills with them. I got to pay close attention to Cade, his relationship with Jared Jack. He was super hands-on with him, did a lot of shooting drills, showed him different areas, like where he said, like, I could hear a lot of things he coached too, and I'm not going to give too much, but he spoke to him like, yo, you can't be stopped right here. If you do this, you cannot be stopped here. He kept reminding Cade that. And Duren was getting kind of that same reinforcement. Hey, if you keep working on this, like he did a lot of work with his jumper. They did a lot of drills where they put the ball on the floor to kind of get him more comfortable than just being a back to the basket or pick and roll type of guy. Like they did a really good job of reinforcing that confidence in them. And I think we're going to see that come to better light with the better help around them, with better coaching around them. I just think it's going to make a lot more sense compared to what we saw last season.
Yeah, same here. I'm happy that, they're getting guys that want to come here, and you don't have to kind of bribe them to come here. Like JB, we'll get into JB's presser later. He it just seems like really enthusiastic about wanting to come here, and it sounds like he actually has a clear-cut plan of how he wants to use this team, which as a fan, I think, and a lot of fans watching this right now, I think they're very excited to what could possibly come. with JB Bickerstaff and all these new assistant coaches coming to Detroit.
Yeah, it's a new culture change. Like I said, kind of coming from even before Monty, even Dwayne Casey, who kind of leaned into a different style compared to Monty, but he's still like an older coach. He still comes from a different like mindset. Like I remember when Cade was drafted, and he said, one of the first thing I was asking guys is, "Do you make your bed?" Like, bruh, like if I'm Cade Cunningham, I would have checked him. Like, no, I don't. What you gonna do? Like, you still not gonna draft me? I just feel like that kind of commentary, and even the stuff that like Monty was talking about, he didn't talk about like a plan. It wasn't a lot of X's and O's. It was always like I appreciate them talking about character, and I appreciate that being important. But when you're as bad as this franchise has been, that can't be the focal point. Even Tom Gores, when he's talking about, we're impacting the community, bruh, impact the court. We don't care about that right now. Like, that's not the focus. Pay attention to your job. That's where you should be at right now.
I 100% agree. I really do. It's so funny you said make the bed, because I was on Twitter, and I want to give Nick Cito a shout out. Really good Pistons follow. He posted I think it was a TikTok around Holland, and his bed was not made whatsoever. So, and one of the comments was just like, Dwayne Casey wouldn't like that. I was just like, bro, you guys are wild.
Tearing his house down when he saw that, I'm sure. Like, when he said that, he said it with a straight face. He started laughing like, bro, what if they don't? You're not going to draft this talent because they don't make their bed? Like, can we be serious for a second, please? Oh,
I love Dwayne. I met him once. I've told people he almost broke my damn hand shaking it. Like, that guy's strong as hell.
Bro, I told my friend the same thing when I met him just a few weeks ago. He's a strong dude with his head shaking.
I swear, man, I thought my hand was broken. He did his. I was like, damn, man. Like, how old are you again? No way, man.
Man, trying to come in with that extra strength to make like, I'm gonna shake strong. He's like, no. I'm here. Like, I'm putting the power. It's like, okay, all right, you got it.
For sure. I did want to transition into a pickup that the Pistons made, and that was on the waiver wire with Paul Reed. So I kind of gave my reactions on this YouTube channel about it. I want to know what you think of this move for the Detroit Pistons, claiming him off waivers.
I like it a lot. I think he fits what they should be looking for. He also gives you a little bit more roster flexibility. I'll explain that in a minute. But in terms of his skill set, I like where he's at. Big body, an obvious lob threat, 7-footer, a helpful defender. He'll be able to fill in stretches where, again, if Jalen Duren is like not really fitting it, unfortunately, what we saw last season with James Wiseman, he fit a lot of what the roster was, which is, okay, we got all these young guys, but we need to find out what we have. I think Paul Reed is a guy you kind of know what you have at this point. And I don't want this to be disrespectful and like that, but it kind of doesn't make the necessity to, we have to play everybody. Like, it doesn't really put you in that position anymore. Like, he's a veteran. And so even if you were to like slide somebody like Beef Stew down, like if he comes off the bench or whatever, you have Paul Reed who's like sufficient enough based on how they're going to play. So if you want to spread out and have shooters but have a 7-foot anchor in the middle, you still can play up to that. And I think Reed helps that a lot based on having Cade Cunningham, having Jaden Ivey who likes throwing for lobs. I just think even if you go to your bench rotation, you can still keep that same identity. That wasn't the case last season, and it wouldn't be the case if Isaiah Stewart is your go-to backup 5. I think it makes a lot more sense having him in that position, and I'm really excited to see what he can bring to this team. I think that was a huge acquisition for him, quiet as it's kept.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a deep dive on Paul Reed, you'd probably like, oh, how old is he? He's like 25. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Played power forward his rookie year, but the Sixers have used him as center the past 2 seasons. And this past season, Joel Embiid got hurt. Surprise, surprise. And Paul Reed stepped up big time. One of my good friends is a huge Sixers fan. And he's like, dude, you are just getting an absolute dog. Like, one of the best backup centers for the value, for the money. Like, he's going to come in. He's able to stretch the floor. Like, don't look at the percentages and look at the box scores. Like, he can actually shoot the ball. He can bang down low. He's got a nice mid-range game, pass a little bit, protect the paint, play the passing lanes. Like, you guys are going to absolutely love him. And, like, I think that's something that we didn't really have last year, and that's no slander towards James Wiseman. He did improve a lot defensively last season.
He did.
But I think what the Pistons needed was a legitimate rim protector at the backup center position, because I love Jalen Duren. We're going to get into him a little bit later because there's a lot of trade circulation, trade rumors going around with his name right now. But I think what the Pistons need is, if you need a shutdown, defender to protect the paint, I think Paul Reed could be out there in crunch time if it's a close game. And I absolutely love this signing for the Pistons, picking him off the waiver wire.
Yeah, and his contract wasn't too crazy. Like, something that kind of surprised me through all the guys that they picked up, like the jokes around getting Tobias Harris was, oh, we'll see how the Pistons have to overpay. Very team-friendly deal. And I feel like it's the same way for Reed. I don't think it broke their cap in any way, shape, or form. I think they're just under like $6 or $7 million at this point. Like, I still think they're at a very feasible point where the guys that they brought in fit their need and don't break the cap. Pistons fans and people were ready to, at the very least, accept one or the other to try to get winning back in place. And they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to take that kind of plunge, and you're getting somebody that makes sense based on the needs of this team. Trajan Langdon has put his priorities out there, and he's hit all of them. And Paul Reed was another one. Like, people were all saying, all right, if you get rid of Wiseman, people were worried about Beef Stew as the sole backup five. And now you bring in somebody like Paul Reed, who, like you said, offers a lot more versatility than you've had with a lot of other bigs. Even like the idea people were bringing up, like Andre Drummond, who would have made sense, but he doesn't offer the versatility that Reed brings. So I think this is a huge pickup for them, especially, knock on wood, hopefully there are no health concerns with Duren, who's dealt with that a lot in his career. I think he's a good guy that you can rely on and not really take a step back in terms of what they're trying to do to get to winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think his nickname is probably one of the coolest nicknames I've read in a minute. B-ball Paul. I think that's just gonna stick with Detroiters all day. Like, they probably won't even call him Paul Reed. It'll just be B-ball Paul all day. And like, I was watching an old interview, and he said he got a tech for staring at a ref, and I was like, oh man, that's Rasheed Wallace vibes all day. He's gonna fit right in just to the culture of Detroit, Michigan, and just the Pistons, because like that type of stuff, like, just Pistons fans eat up.
100%. It adds to like the identity that you're trying to establish. Being a tough-minded team, plays defense. So yeah, show them some Rasheed Wallace highlights, show them some Bad Boys highlights, and say, hey, you kind of have this little bit in you. Bring it out, because we're trying to establish that and make it infectious within the whole team. You could be that guy to help it, and I think he's a perfect guy for what they need. I love the pickup a lot. I really do.
If you guys do get bored, look up some of his old tweets, because they're wild. I went down that rabbit hole. Some of his old tweets are absolutely wild.
I haven't seen his tweet. This a little much.
I'm not gonna repeat.
That's what. No cancel today. No cancel today. No.
No, I ain't trying to do any FCC type of shit over here.
No.
Not at all. Not at all. Before we do get into the next segment, we do have to hear from our sponsors at Game Time. So let's hear from them real quick.
You guys, I have to tell you about today's sponsor, the Game Time Ticket app. How exciting would it be to attend a Major League Baseball game this summer? Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. One of my favorite features within this app is the views from your seats feature. This allows you and shows you how close you're getting to the action before you buy your ticket to the event you're trying to go to. If you guys go over, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
We'd like to thank the Game Time Ticket app for sponsoring today's podcast, and also shout out to CNLS for sponsoring today's podcast. So I want to transition into Summer League, and I wanted to get kind of your impressions. Who impressed you the most last night?
The obvious name is Mr. Klintman. He was all over the place, both sides of the floor, doing just a little bit of everything, playing defense on multiple different positions. He did an awesome job stopping like 3 or 4 transition buckets from the Sixers, which is a huge place where the Pistons struggled at last season. And you're starting to see why he got that improved contract. That kind of came up out of nowhere because there was a lot of talk about him spending time in the G League. But the way he played, and again, you kind of got to just, eyeball it and guess at this point because he hasn't played with the starters. But the things he was doing, like even like the short roll drop off that he gave to Ron that gave him that floater in the second quarter, just simple things like that they didn't have. It's like that simple, I got to move the ball. He's open here. Like his ability to catch and shoot from the corner, his ability to orchestrate from the top of the key. Like he just did a lot of things that I was not expecting at all. And knowing again how they really need a solidified stretch forward for the future. They don't have that at this point, and I'm not even saying he's going to be that. But what we saw in the game, even despite a loss, was extremely encouraging. Mad efficient, scored 13 points, 5 assists, 5 boards. Just stuff the stats, he was all over the place. Like he kind of, again, don't let's not go too far, but he was filling kind of that Draymond role very well for the Summer League team, on top of the ability to shoot too. And that I think is a huge have. So if he keeps developing and if he's what we think he can be based on that game, I really like this kid's upside. He did a phenomenal job in that game yesterday.
He was my MVP yesterday too. I think he stole the show. I think a lot of people were really focused on Ron Holland because he was the 5th overall pick, and maybe there wasn't as much pressure and spotlight on Bobby or Bobby. I hope it's Bobby so we can have Toby and Bobby 2.0 in Detroit.
Yeah, for sure.
But to your point, man, like he kind of looked like a point forward out there. 5 assists, I think, kind of went underlooked. But if you watched the games last night, he was looking for his teammates if he got doubled or he was just looking for the open man. He's just a really smart basketball player. He does everything like pretty good. There's not like something he does that's like absolutely elite. To your point, there was a play where he was on the opposite end. I think it was in the corner 3, and he rushed back to contest his shot late in the fourth quarter. Like his defensive effort, his instinct to play the passing lanes. Like this kid, I think I see why Trajan Langdon and the Pistons gave him a standard contract. I expect him, if he keeps playing like that, he will definitely be in the rotation.
It's hard to argue against it. Again, I know it's early, but again, it's things that he was doing that you can't teach or maybe shouldn't have to teach. Like you're gonna preach it to the players, effort this and make that extra pass. He's doing that already. And even if you looked at like the first quarter, like they had maybe 2 or 3 plays where they were so unorganized on offense. They were heaving up last second shot clock expiring shots, and they just weren't settling it at all. But when he was getting more involved, I think it was the second half too. That third quarter was probably their best quarter that they played, second and third quarter. When he was on ball and orchestrating and setting guys up and finding cutters, you saw a lot more movement on the floor when he was playing that point forward role. Knowing that you have Cade Cunningham who can post, JB Bickerstaff, again, we're going to talk about him. He said he wants to use Jaden Ivey in movement way more often. Having a forward being able to kind of be that lead guy to get those guys looks and get them open, because last season this was one of my biggest pet peeves. That was Jalen Duren they were kind of doing that with. He played a lot of time at the top of the key with the ball if he wasn't doing screen and rolls with Cade. And I hated that because he's a big guy. Put him on the block. Find a forward that can go get him the ball instead of having him throw lobs up to Beef Stew, who's 6'7". Having a guy like Bobby, if he can translate with the guys around him that we're talking about, that is going to be a huge dynamic that this team can open up. I'm really excited to see what he can do moving forward.
I think listening to a lot of interviews, because I went down YouTube today, is pre-draft video with, I want to say it was The Ringer with Kevin O'Connor. Mm-hmm. And he said, when I was over in Australia in the NBL, the coach asked me, I need you to be the energy guy, just the defense guy. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm very confident in my game that if you need me to be the energy guy, I could be that guy. You need me to take shots and make threes, I can be that guy. He seems like one of those glue players where saying, okay, I need you to shoot threes tonight. He'd probably do it. I need you to lock down the best defender or the best offensive player tonight. He'd probably do it. And when I kind of look at him as a player, he kind of mentioned like players that he like looks at himself as. He said like Nick Batum, Michael Porter Jr., and Tobias Harris. When I was watching him like play, like shoot offensively, I kind of saw the Tobias Harris stuff he was talking about, but he's just such an interesting player, man. Like, I don't know where they're going to slot him. Like, I think he could play small forward, but maybe he plays power forward. He's just so versatile, and he has guard skills too. It's just like they might have got a steal with him in the second round.
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting it at all. Again, some of the stuff that he's able to bring, again, having the switchability, the intelligence on the floor, just that kind of stuff is just so valuable, especially for a young team that's trying to really find themselves, and especially in summer league. Like, I'm a forward basketball player. We all hooped at the Y or Lifetime or wherever. When guys go just play, especially in summer league, they're just trying to get their shots up. They're just trying to go show what they can do, showcase themselves. They're not playing the most like defined team basketball, which is kind of understandable to a point. He was not doing that. He understood spacing. He understood where guys were supposed to be. He's talking on the floor. Again, these are just things that you, in a young player, you probably have to teach at a point, but he was already hitting that. Again, I'm not sure that was communicated from Jared Jack or what it was, but he did a fantastic job being that extended coach on the floor, especially when he got the ball more and became more active with his team. Like, yeah, he's giving them something different that they haven't had in a while. If he can, it just adds, again, knowing that they have a lot of forwards at this point now, they didn't have one that they could look forward to for the future because a lot of them are on short-term deals. If he keeps going and he's playing like this, especially as a defender too, the sky's the limit for this guy. I really want to see what he does with the starting lineup for real.
Yeah, same here. I mean, like if he keeps taking progression and developing his game, to your point, yeah, the sky's the limit with him. There's one more player I did want to talk about. That impressed me. Maybe I'm just a sicko because I like the underdog. I like the story, and that was Donis Jenkins, who is a two-way guy.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I love this pace. He seemed
so
under control. Didn't seem like he really rushed anything out there. I think, before the third quarter started, he was perfect. He was like 3 for 3. He had a block that Jared Jack did contest. I think that was the play you were talking about earlier. Yep. He just seems like a really sound point guard. And it's really rare you see that of undrafted guys like that.
I ain't gonna lie. Like, yes, he was fantastic. I was really impressed watching him on both ends of the floor. The guys who were the most impressive were the new guys. And Grant, I know it's only just one player that's returning on the roster with Marcus Sasser. The guys who were shining and looking like the more like complete defined players who understood like team dynamics were the guys who haven't been here yet. That shocked me. I love watching him play. Jace Johnson deserves a lot of credit as well. He was all over the place. Like, another problem I've had with like Piston bigs is like when they get like passes on the block, they drop a lot of those passes. He had great hands. He wasn't bringing it down low. He's going up strong, had an awesome and one in the second half. He let some energy out. These young guys that they're playing with, again, wins aside, because I'm not looking at wins right now. I'm just looking at baseline team basketball and how you adjust quarter by quarter. The young guys who are just stepping into these positions look fantastic. Jenkins was one of them. Like you said, Johnson really showed that he could be somebody that's effective as well. I think they got some real talent that should shine during the summer league. I'm really excited for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, Jace Johnson worked his ass off with the Crews when he got traded from the Santa Cruz Warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Ben Carloni, man. He just his team was getting poached, and it seems like every couple of weeks he's just trading draft picks, just filling that center position. Like he did such a good job just filling out the Crews, and they were competitive basically all year. I think they just missed either they made the playoffs or they missed the playoffs. I don't remember, but
just missed it.
Yeah, I mean they had a really good season under Jamel McMillan over there. One of my other jobs is like actually covering like the Crews a little bit. So I will talk some G League on here from time to time to let people know about the prospects.
Yeah, he was somebody I was vouching for. I wrote an article about some options who they should be looking at. JB was one of those options, but I was really pushing for Jamel McMillan. How he stepped in with the Crews. Again, everybody listening, if you haven't gone to check out Motor City Crews basketball, it's a blast. And the way that these guys play is absolutely worth it. They're going to look a little different now without Jared Roden, no Stanley Amude. But they put a good product together, the guys that they had. And I really like what they've been doing thus far, especially with Ben. I love Ben. He's a super good guy. They've been very active with a lot of guys who have been poached left and right. They're doing a really good job with the players that they're brewing over there. I love what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you might have another. They've been so lucky with the point guards that they've had. I mean, like starting off with like Saban Lee, and then you had Xavier Simpson. Maybe Jenkins is going to be that next great point guard for them. So what you never know. But Tolu Smith too, organic Lindo. 100% agree. Tolu Smith had a really,
Yes.
really good. I think it was a starting center. He did a lot of things that I liked. He crashes the glass almost every time, and that's something that you don't really see a lot of bigs do when you watch the game. And I think it's something that's just an effort thing. It's not something you can teach, because he was really out there just crashing the glass. I did want to talk about him for like 2 seconds, because I know that there's a lot of like guys that might not be on this roster, might be on the Cruise, might be in the G League, but I think they all did a really good job. What I wanted to transition to is the guy that probably everyone was watching for, and that was Ron Holland. What were your thoughts on him in his first summer league game with the Detroit Pistons?
I think fans should be more encouraged than what they might have been before the draft. There's a lot of talk about his jump shot. There's a lot of talk about the lack of shooting. We understand why. We get it. I totally understand. He's not as far off as people think. I think I was extremely impressed, even with the misses, going 5 of 15. I just like the intelligence of his game, the aggressiveness. He's not scared to drive. He's a good handle. Like, people compared him a lot to Asar because they're like raw athletic but still working on their jumper. They're not the same kind of player. Like, Asar really struggled with his dribbling. He wasn't super aggressive getting to the hole and getting to the lane. Ron Holland looks like he excels in that. Like, he did a really good job attacking, keeping his dribble alive. And the jump shot is not broke. Like, it's not a bad form. It doesn't look like it's going to take like a ton of time. And even like what the highlights in the games that I looked at from the G League with the struggles that they had with Ignite, a lot of the threes that he was taking when they were down like 10, 15 points or they were losing, and he's trying to play hero ball to bring them back up. Like, I don't think that's going to have to be the case when he comes to Detroit and when he steps in for the Pistons. So I loved what I saw from him. I love the aggressiveness. I see the upside as a defender. That mid-range shot that he knocked down looked really good. And again, even if that's the starting line, the Pistons don't need him to be a knockdown 3-point shooter right now. If he can just be aggressive, keep working on driving to the lane, be that highlight reel where he almost dunked on a dude in the third quarter. And then one of my other favorite plays was, again, this is me being a nerd, when he catches a rebound, he's super athletic. He was super active on the glass, but he did an outlet pass as soon as he got the ball. He's not looking to just dribble. He had the ability to look up, find his guys, and try to create transition opportunities. I'm not sure how much time he's going to get, but from what we saw yesterday, I think the upside was well on display, and I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, I think there were positive and negatives with him yesterday, and I think just after one summer league game, we shouldn't overreact because it's a summer league game, it's scrimmage. Mm-hmm. I really liked his activeness on both ends of the floor. To your point, he went coast to coast, outlet pass, mid-range game looked good. That dunk, if he would have hit that dunk, I think a lot of people probably wouldn't even have talked about the 5 for 15 shooting. They probably wouldn't.
No,
there were a lot of like bright spots with him, but there are also areas where it's July. He'll be in the weight room, you guys.
Yes.
He got stripped multiple times by the same guy on the same play. Like, he's going to be in the weight room. He's going to be working out. He'll be adding weight. I think the areas of his game where he needs to improve, I don't think they're going to take, years to develop. I think, his role for me, the way I look at it, he'll be in the rotation, but he's not going to be relied on like Asar was last year. Like, they're saying, okay, Asar, we need you to start. Okay, now we need you to lock down Zach LaVine because he has 48 points right now, right? Like, Ron Holland can kind of ease into it, watch from the bench, go against guys like Tobias, Tim Hardaway, Malik Beasley every day, get better, and kind of ease his way into it. I think the way I look at this pick with Trajan is this is a long-term bet on the type of player that Trajan thinks he may be able to develop into. And I think when you swing for the fences like that, if it hits, you look like the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, he wasn't my go-to pick for the draft. I really wanted Cody Williams. I thought he would have been a good fit, and I kind of think he fits to kind of what Ron Holland does too, because he has some of that explosive ability to him, except he's just a little bit of a better shooter. But I understand the pick and the bet for Ron Holland. The Trajan kind of came in, like, he spoke to it. He said he didn't really have the ability to scout as heavy and go as wild as he wanted to, because he kind of got rushed into the position a little bit. But I understand the selection. And like you just said, they're in a position now where they don't need to rely on him right away. He can take his time. He can stay in the workout room with Asar and Fred Vincent, who I think is the X factor in all of what they do moving forward. But yeah, like you said, he doesn't have to rush to get there. So even if he's just, growing as a defender, if he's growing with his finishing or putting on muscle and, adding different tools to his game, all that is fine for this rookie year. His 3-point development is not a priority at this point. We're going to be paying attention to it to see how it goes, but it's not something that's needed in this immediate moment. It's not like a Jaden Ivey who kind of has to turn that on like sooner than later. Cade, he got to kind of turn that on sooner than later. So he's not in the position where he needs to rush that, and fans don't need to be rushing that either. He can take his time, learn, and be a young guy and learn from the veterans in front of him at this time.
Yeah, like I said, I think he'll be fine. I think some fans, I get it. We haven't watched basketball since April. And then when you're watching Pistons basketball in March and April, you'd have to be a very devoted individual to watch a lot of G League guys and guys that are no longer on the roster. So I tip my cap out to any Piston fan that we're watching games in February, March, and April, or even all season long for that matter. I get it. We just had our first summer league game. Play the Rockets tomorrow, so that should be a really good game to see Reed Shepherd and all those boys out there. But I think Ron will be fine. I think one game isn't going to make or break who he is. I thought he looked a little nervous out there personally, and that's to be expected.
Of course,
I think he'll be fine. I think he'll bounce back, and I wasn't actually too surprised with the Ron Holland pick. I had either him or Cody Williams, kind of given Trajan's draft history. And the more I watched Ron, I was like, oh yeah, that's a Trajan guy all day. Ron's gonna be his pick. That's gonna be his guy. But I'm not mad at the pick either.
Yeah, no, I can't be. Again, he showed a lot of the upside. It was a lot of fun to watch with the G League Ignite. I kind of watched some of the games, definitely scouted some of the highlights and whatnot. And even with the losses, you could just see that he was a shining star for a reason. He's a focal point for a reason. But people were kind of worried, when he talked about, I didn't even have a workout with the team. I didn't really talk to him much. People were kind of worried about that. But I think as Summer League goes on and watching his game define stronger and stronger and stronger, especially as he gets more comfortable with the other guys, I think people are going to be a bit more comfortable understanding why Trajan took a swing for a guy like that instead of just going for a Dalton Kennett, who can shoot, or just the guy that fills a need. He fills a need, but he can give you a little bit more if those needs become something different or if they grow into where we think they can go. He has that special ability. It's going to take some time to get there, but it's making sense based on what we saw yesterday.
100%. I do agree with you there. I think he'll be fine. That's what I was telling fans yesterday. Don't overreact. It's one game. He'll be fine. But I did want to transition into Jalen Duren. Now, I do have some audio I do want to play for people before we kind of get into this topic. So this was from The Athletic, their beat reporter. I believe his name is Fred Katz. So this is what he had to say about the Detroit Pistons picking up Paul Reed and Jalen Duren.
My colleague Shams Charania just reported that the Pistons are claiming him off waivers, which is a weird transaction by the Pistons, honestly.
New front office, still a lot of weirdness out of that organization.
Really, really weird Pistons transaction. I talk about the Pistons way more than I should on this podcast. That's a weird. I keep thinking, you know what? That's maybe a foreboding Pistons transaction. That's I've got the Windhorse meme going right now because they've been definitely taking calls on Isaiah Stewart, and I think they're more open to moving Duren than you would expect from a promising 20-year-old center who they picked in the first round 2 years ago. So I wonder.
Who, by the way, I had heard from Knicks people at the time that they really liked him in the draft.
Yeah, and they traded the pick that became him away.
So it gets you got you room for Jalen Brunson though. So
and Isaiah Hartenstein. Everybody forgets it got you room for Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Yeah. So it ended up working out. But with the Pistons, I wonder if that's why they're after a center. But still, $7.7 million for a third string center when you're the Detroit Pistons. I know you have room, but they're doing some weird stuff.
Yeah,
they're doing some weird stuff.
So usually I wouldn't play audio from a podcast, but him being a national reporter, kind of being with like the same level as like a James Edwards, like those athletic guys hear stuff. So my question to you is, obviously we heard the Knicks stuff, but I also read an article from one of your colleagues over at ClutchPoints that the Pelicans are also interested in Jalen Duren. So what are your thoughts about just the trade talk surrounding him right now?
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Monty built him up a lot when he got hired, calling him a potential top 10 player. We kind of saw what his ceiling could look like when he came out of Memphis. I still really like him as a player. He's super young. He's still kind of learning and taking some time. And I kind of think to an extent we're seeing a lot of the effects of like the past couple seasons kind of take hold right now. So like his ankle injuries slowed him down a lot. Not being able to play with Cade much his first year didn't really get him a lot of time to get familiar. His defense is still really a problem. Like he's really struggling with the ability to defend without fouling, especially as the rim protector that they're hoping that he can be. But JB spoke to wanting to unlock his potential and looking at him as the guy that can be that rim protector for the Pistons. I understand why these other teams like the Pelicans, who are really just a big away maybe from being the contenders that they want to be, Knicks in the same exact position. I understand why those two teams would want to look at a guy like him in his rookie deal, but yeah, he's got a lot of room where he needs to grow. He's kind of in the same position where, like, because people were asking him to, like, oh, if only he puts a jumper together, or, oh, if he can learn how to, work on a few moves on the outside or be a spot-up shooter. You don't need him to do that. Like, I remember in the summer league, he's bringing the ball up off transition and, like, trying to orchestrate your offense. Like, I don't want to see that. It's not bad. I understand why you're trying it in summer league, but he needs to be working on having his back to the basket and imposing that athleticism and that size. Like, I just thought they were working on a lot of things that he should not have been working on last season. Like, the potential is there. I love the upside with him and Cade. If Cade sees a second of him being open, he's going to throw him the ball and get that lob up. Like, that's Cade's IQ. He sees that. So I understand why these other teams are interested in him. I'm hoping the Pistons don't pull that plug yet, because there is so much help that has been added around him, where now he can just be that man in the middle, and you can see him play as a different player compared to what we saw last season under Monty. I get why they're interested. Pistons should not be pulling the trigger on him yet. Not yet.
I agree. To your point, you saw him try to initiate DHO offense, which that's fine, but Jalen Duren is going to have to learn how to run a DHO offense, and that's going to take more than some summer league. That's going to take more than a season. I mean, it took Andre Drummond 2.5 seasons to learn it, and he got pretty good at it. But that's a very hard offense to learn, especially at the center position. Like, the only two centers that I think can get away with it is Sabonis and Nikola Jokic. Like, those are the two centers when you see them, bring the ball up the court a little bit and run the offense through them through dribble handoffs. Like, it works really well, but I don't really think that's something that Jalen Duren needs to really worry about. To your point, I think he needs to be in that, the low block area. To your point, what JB said is he'd like to have him be, 10 to 15 feet, like away from the rim to kind of set picks, work down low. Not the top of the key, stretching the floor, initiating offense. Obviously, he wants the guards to do that, which I think is smart. But to the trade talks, here's my thing. When I look at the Knicks and I look at the Pelicans, I think they're both in the same position. They both lost contributing centers, and they're trying to get a new center to fill the void. The Knicks lost Isaiah Hartenstein, got the bag, and it's actually funny because Jalen Brunson took a lot less than they probably could have. They probably could have re-signed Hartenstein.
Yes.
Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
And JV going to Washington for as cheap as he went, I don't know, man. Like, the Pelicans couldn't offer him $3 for $30 million over the last 3 years. Like, that's pretty crazy. $10 million a year for him is insanely cheap, I think, for the production that you're getting, given like the type of player he is. But I think the way I look at it, it's two playoff teams that are looking for a cheap center that's on a rookie deal that they don't have to worry about paying right now.
Right.
And when you look at Duren, You look at Stewart, you look at Paul Reed. Outside of Stewart, because Stewart's like 16 million. Like Paul Reed and Duren are under 10 million. That's the way I look at it, and I could understand why the Knicks beat reporters from the Athletic are kind of saying, "Oh, that's kind of weird that they're looking to add Paul Reed." As Pistons fans, we didn't see it as weird. We were actually kind of like saying, like, "Okay, go get a rim protector, go get a backup center," because that's what we needed. Because if Isaiah Stewart was going to be your backup center, I think a lot of us would have a lot of questions to like how he'd be used, because I think he could play backup center, just not every day.
Right. He's very situational based on his size, based on his skill set. Like it's just, if anybody, like again, you spoke about Isaiah Stewart also being on the block. They're fielding calls for him as well. Like to me, that would be somebody I'd kind of be okay with them having to take that move from, because I just feel like if you're wanting to have guys who give you more versatility on both sides of the ball, because I think Stewart's a good defender. He's one of the few guys who can keep Giannis like a little bit at bay when he comes to see the Pistons. I love the way he plays against him. But offensively, he's a one-trick pony. Like we saw him stand outside. Defenses were not respecting him, even when he was making the shots. And that's not going to fly. You need a shooter that can draw attention away from other people. You need a creator or a scorer that can also put the ball on the ground and maybe go get his own shot. So I feel like he's the one that really is like kind of at limbo of where his future could be with his team. I thought that contract was way too premature. And having Duren now, I just feel like he makes way more sense for what they're trying to accomplish. Another thing that kind of added to all that hype was the Team USA hoops that he played last season. And like we were all talking about how Cade was the man and what he was doing. Duren being ahead of schedule and like doing the things that he was doing, showing his ability to use his strength. Like they showed the ad what he had on Brandon Ingram where he's talking trash. Like that's what Pistons fans were expecting to see. And then Summer League comes up and he's catching the ball off the rebound, doing crossovers. Like I know that one play where he's like going between his legs and did the pull up from the elbow. Like that was cool, but that's not what he should be focusing on, especially when we didn't really see much of him catching it on the block and trying to like impose his strengths. Like he's doing things like the other things that we thought he was good at. Like we thought he was a decent enough ball handler. He showed the ability to pass at Memphis and in his rookie season, but both of those kind of regressed in his second year based on how Monty had him playing. So I think JB is going to do a much better job at, as he spoke to in his presser, using and utilizing the strengths of the guys that he has. I don't think he's going to play too much outside of that. And I think we're going to see a different kind of Jalen Duren this coming season.
Yeah, I don't think anything will be like. It seemed like last year they were just kind of seeing, like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it stuck, and nothing stuck last year.
Right.
Like there was a lot of just like, experimentation with like Cade, Ivy, especially Ivy, which we'll get into a little bit later, and Duren and Stewart. It's just like you got to play to the strengths, and I think JB knows that and he understands it. Obviously, he saw the Pistons 4 times a year, and he had to scout against them, so he knows what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. So I think getting a coach like him that is a little bit familiar with the Pistons, and he's been coaching in the NBA for a little bit, I think he'll know how to get them right, how to play to the strengths. No more of those dribbles at the top of the key, crazy fadeaways, like no more of that stuff. Like it's cool if you can hit it, but like you got to play to your strengths. And kind of to wrap up this trade talk thing, I think it's just a little bit of summer talk because it's July. Yeah. We don't have like real basketball until like October, and I think you're gonna see like a lot of like potential summer talk from now until basketball season starts. Just wild stuff, trade scenarios, random trades, mock trades, because we miss basketball and we're just kind of filtering out the content until basketball season does start. But I think the Pistons ultimately keep Duren. To Stewart, I wouldn't be surprised that, as I did hear that they were taking calls on him all the way till like last season. Like the Pelicans and the Thunder were trying to get him. So he obviously has value around the league. Yeah, Boston too. Like, wouldn't surprise me whatsoever because he does have a lot of value as an energy guy and a backup in a reserve role. But I honestly think Jalen Duren will probably be here. Isaiah Stewart, I'm not so sure.
Especially, we just talked about Clintman too. Like he's what Isaiah is, or he's. I don't want to prolong too much, but the point is, for what we saw with him, he seems better fitting as that stretch forward. Even if he's your backup, he seems way better fitting for the role that the Pistons are looking for at that power forward position. Like, I just think he gives you way more flexibility. Like, Beef Stew kind of limits them. We saw that. He's not really much of a lob threat. And even people hype him up with the goon thing. Like, bro, the goon thing was him knocking over crowd control employees at LCA. He didn't even go put a hand on LeBron when he got knocked out like that. Like, I don't even put a lot of stock into that as his, like, the goon label. Like earn that if that's really who you are. And I didn't really see a whole lot of that. I feel like a lot of what he's done has been a little inflated. And again, if he's that name, one of those first names that are kind of packaged out, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, me either. I think he's a good player, but I think the way the Pistons use him just as being a spot up shooter, I think it's kind of as like he's more of a guy, like an energy guy, if you will, off the bench, bang down low. But obviously, they didn't want to do that. But I do want to transition to JB Bickerstaff. He did have a press conference this week. Mm-hmm. And one of the first questions I did want to ask you was actually a Cade Cunningham question. And the question was, JB wants to make Cade into a two-way player. So my question to you is, do you think JB Bickerstaff can turn Cade Cunningham into the two-way player that a lot of Pistons fans view him as?
100% he can. Cade's defensive prowess is very, very slept on. Cade's size, athleticism, and his just overall will to want to be a defender. He doesn't really back away. He's not one of the guys that they kind of just like throw in the corner like a Steph Curry because they don't want to like expose him. Cade's not a guy that they can just like hunt out and like take advantage of. Like if they do, it's to put him in foul trouble. But he's shown the ability to play defense without fouling. Wasn't his best last season, but I just think it was because of the lack of defenders that they had on the team. The best defender that they brought in was Asar Thompson, who was a rookie, which made no sense to me. So I absolutely could see JB Bickerstaff kind of turning Cade into that guy. I feel like like I said, the size is there, the will is there. He's able to do it off ball. We've seen him strip up guys like Luka in his rookie season. Trae Young, he's done a good job against the Tyrese Halliburtons of the world. Even if you look at the guards in the division, or even the Cleveland who we played with last season, those guys are undersized. So while Cleveland was a fantastic defensive team, it wasn't because of their guards. Like, I don't really think they offered a ton based on what Cleveland's defensive identity was. Cade can add to that because he's big. He can play in the front court. He can kind of give you some versatile looks on your lineup. He's a fantastic rebounder too. Like, I just think he gives so much more as a guard that two-way hope that JB is looking for is absolutely there. It also takes a little bit of pressure off of guys who aren't the best defenders. Like, I don't think you should be looking at Jaden Ivey to turn into some lockdown defender. If you have Cade, if you have other guys around him, you have veterans around Cade potentially as well, it kind of takes a little bit more responsibility off his plate. And it also gives him the opportunity to guard, like, maybe not maybe the team's top 2 or 3 scorers. Maybe he's now going to your number 4 guy, just watching on a spot up shooter. That takes a little more pressure off of him. It gives him better, more fresh legs to play offense too. I definitely think that potential is there, and I can't wait to see what that transition looks like.
I think when you talk about Cade Cunningham and you talk about defense, I think last year a lot of people I remember reading on just like scrolling on Twitter, a lot of people were kind of disappointed. And the way I looked at it was he was putting so much of his energy on the offensive side of the floor that maybe he just wasn't locked in on the defensive end. And I understand that when you're the number 1 option on a rebuilding team that only won 14 games and you're averaging 22 points and you need to even score 35 for the game to be remotely close, right, maybe your attention on defense isn't there. But if you go back and watch his rookie year under Casey, he was locking people up. He was playing good defense. So yes, we know it's there. We know he can play defense. We know he can lock up some of the better players in this league. I mean, he was getting stamps from approval from Kevin Durant for his defense. I mean, we know the type of player he can be, and I think JB will get him right. JB's going to put him in the right position. Sounds like he already has a plan for Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, how he wants to use them and not kind of have them out on an island, kind of like what we saw last year. A lot of the players that were playing defense last year are just the schemes that they were using. Kind of seemed like Monty, the way he like structured it, there wasn't really a concise plan. And it was just like, well, hey, we tried. I think with JB, I think he has a clear-cut plan of what he wants to do and execute. And I think that's something I'm really excited about to see how Cade Cunningham develops under him.
I keep saying it. Cade Cunningham is the most underrated player in basketball right now. It's because of the things that the other people don't see. And again, those who are here, those who are in the chat, me and you, we watch the Pistons every day. We know what they speak of. We know who they are. We know what they represent. Cade's defense doesn't get a ton of notoriety because people don't know that he is that good at it yet, just because of how bad the team is. Yeah, that ability is absolutely there. I feel like he really I keep speaking to his ceiling because even with what he's done thus far, with the help around him, going on his third coach in 4 years, the limited spacing he's had, the injuries he's had to deal with, like the responsibility that's been put on his shoulders, and the way he's been able to excel up to this point on both sides of the floor, I think it's extremely understated based on who he is as a player. I think Cade's ceiling is extremely high still at this point, and I think we're going to see the best version of him on both sides of the floor this coming season.
Yeah, same here. I was really encouraged to hear JB talk about him, being a two-way player, because I think that's how a lot of us view him as. And I know some people in the chat are, asking about like availability because he has been injured. This is my thing with availability. I think if you were to go on Basketball Reference, look at the availability stuff, and then look at the schedule and see if the Pistons were trying to tank for a pick. I think a lot of the games outside of the injury that he had his second year, Cade really hasn't missed that many games. I think the Pistons were just trying to tank and shut him down personally.
I agree. I think that's what a lot played to last season. And then even if we're thinking about Cade when he is injured, we've seen him play through injury. We all remember his rookie year, and it kind of sucks to have to keep going down this nostalgic lane with him. But he's a young player, so I'm going to do it anyway. His rookie year, when he had that coming out game against the Nets, he missed a quarter and a half. He played the first quarter, wasn't really shooting and scoring all that much. But when he came back, he was putting up a career high and couldn't be stopped. And he had just hurt his back like the quarter before that after missing the whole second, third quarter. So, I just think people are really sleeping on and not really understanding what this guy is capable of and the responsibility that's been on his plate. I hate the argument of, oh, it's empty production. Oh, it's empty calorie stats. It's not his fault. He's not tanking out either. He's still giving great effort. I got to see his mindset, in the middle of that 28-game losing streak. He owned all of it head up. I was in the presser watching his facial expression, kind of owning it. And he didn't put it on his team either. He stayed as the leader. He said, no, I got to do better. What happened here is a result of me too not playing up to snuff. So I got to be better. He is really taking on that responsibility. And you're seeing that he wants that too with the contract he just signed. Would anybody have blamed Cade if he said, I'll wait to sign that for a little bit? I don't think anybody would have blamed him if he said that, money aside. So I just think he has a lot to look forward to. And again, I really think this new help around him is going to unlock his potential better than we've seen thus far.
You want to get into the debates and conversations. No shot at Jeremy Graham whatsoever, but that's the best player he's ever played with. And you go out and you get Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Malik Beasley. You're getting more vets around him now. I think he'll be fine. I think the production will go up. I think the assist numbers are going to go up because you're getting more shooters around him. I think as a player, I think JB has a lot of plans to what he wants to use him as the point guard and the franchise player of this team. So one of the next questions I wanted to jump into was JB had something that I thought was really interesting in his presser. And I think maybe some people maybe missed it. He said he wants to make it fun for the young guys. So my question to you is, what do you think of him saying he wants to make it fun for the Detroit Pistons, and how important do you think that is for a young rebuilding team like the Pistons?
I think it's huge because they're at a point where basketball hasn't been fun. This isn't a situation where you're a contending team and the fun is the chase of a title. The Celtics are not coming in to have fun. These guys are coming in serious and understanding that it's a business and it's a lot at stake right here. The Pistons are kind of at the floor level of what they need to be doing in terms of their development. And why not start with making things more fun? He called it a fun situation in terms of the development for this team. He spoke to plans of what he wanted to do. And I think it makes a lot of sense, especially based on the kind of coach that he is. He's 45, 44 years old, so he's the youngest coach through Cade's tenure thus far. Like Monty was older, Dwayne Casey was older, and like granted, you could have respect for those older guys who have been there, done that, but they're coming into it. Those guys were coming from situations where they were at winning products and winning teams, but they were also older at the same time. So now you're a younger coach coming in with a younger team, understanding what they just went through. You just played against them 4 times over the past couple seasons as the rival coach with Cleveland. He understands what it takes to relate to them, and he spoke directly to that. I think he's showing that as well with the coaches he's brought in, like we talked about earlier, having, former players like kind of come speak to what's necessary for them to, enhance their development, and just finding different ways to make the game fun for them. Like, again, it killed me to see Cade and Ivy and Duren in the middle of that losing streak and just, we got to be better next time. And see the look on their face, even when they won, it's like when they celebrated, like, it feels so good to have this. Like, it shouldn't, like, this feeling should not exist. You shouldn't be on cloud 9 after one regular season win. So they don't really even understand, like, the correct emotion of how to, like, navigate through a season yet based on all the struggling that they've gone through. So I like that that's the start. It's not like he spoke to not wanting to rush a winning timeline. He said the playoffs are going to come when they come. But for right now, we want these guys to have fun, embrace the position that they're in, and let the wins carry how they're supposed to. Like, I love that he spoke to that. I think that's very important for a young team.
Me too. I think, even when the Detroit Pistons started rebuilding, when they traded away Andre Drummond, and they're getting all these guys, and I want to give Casey credit because Casey never really would show his hand. He was always positive, and the guys genuinely liked playing for him. I don't know if he made it fun, but JB seems like he wants to make it fun. And his answer to the question that was asked was like, we're going to be on the road a lot. We're going to be around each other a lot. It's like when the guys come in to work out, he's just like, I want everyone from the staff to be smiling in a good mood because that's going to just be infectious all the way down from like Hooper to Cade Cunningham. Like we want this whole organization to just be on the same page, be positive, be happy, and try to get better and build a brand new culture basically in Detroit. And I think that's the first step to, getting back to the Detroit Pistons winning ways that a lot of fans were accustomed to for several years.
I talked about Jared Jack challenging that play in the Summer League game. The energy that JB Bickerstaff coaches with, I think matches the energy of the players because we saw a lot of chirping from the Pistons to the officials. We saw a lot of like emotion of like them just being frustrated and being kind of tired with what was going on. And Monty would just sit on the bench with like the Jim Caldwell face. It's like he didn't know what was going on. Like it took that New York Knicks game where they got screwed over in that last call to end the game for him to finally wake up and say, hey, how can we change this? Or where's the New York media now? JB Bickerstaff comes with that energy all the time. Everybody's seen the clip where he's talking to the official. He said, that's BS, but okay. And he gives that kind of moxie all the time. I think that kind of stuff is infectious with a young team. Like if I'm a player and I'm seeing my coaches riding for me, that makes me want to ride for him that much harder. Like Cade, when he was yelling, he got teched up in that same New York Knicks game. And he's talking to Monty, like, yo, he just teched me. And Monty just stares at him and doesn't say anything. Like, bruh, can you fight for your team and show that you actually care? That's the kind of stuff that gets their emotion channeled in better ways. It makes the game more fun. It makes coming to work a lot more fun because you know that your boss got your back. Your coach got your back. And that kind of makes a lot of difference. I didn't see that kind of connection with Monty and the players last season. And I think JB is going to turn that around immediately with the team.
So the last coach I will say that had that same type of energy was Stan Van Gundy. Stan Van Gundy was very energetic. He would tell a player if they sucked, he wouldn't give him a high five. Like he would call a ref out. You say that's bullshit. I think that's the type of energy these players need because they're so young. They don't know how to win. They need some sort of direction. And I think having a coach like JB makes more sense for them because you look at all the Cleveland Cavaliers stuff, like they had a junkyard chain, like a player of the game. Bring that to Detroit. Bring that type of energy to Detroit because those players are going to want to get a player of the game chain every game because now you're creating competition in the locker room amongst all your teammates. You're creating a culture. And I think that's what he wants to do and try to bring to the Pistons.
I'm all for any kind of idea, victory buffs, whatever you want to do, something that's got to get some fun. Because he talked about wanting to establish an identity with the team, and that kind of goal, those kind of goals, like real obtainable things to do like that. That makes it more fun. It gives them something different to chase for without just thinking, hey, we're gonna get to the playoffs. We're gonna get to the postseason. That's not in their near window right now. They don't need to be worried about that. Iron out the X's and O's, have some fun with your team, build that camaraderie. And like again, they weren't able to do that last season with all the injuries that they had, the trades that they had towards the end of the deadline. Like they just didn't have the ability to build that. And I think it's a completely different wave right now with Bickerstaff on the bench. I'm super excited to see what he brings here.
So you're gonna have to trademark this because the people love the victory buffs.
Let's go.
That you just suggested. Victory buffs. I mean, if anyone at the the Detroit Pistons social team is listening or watching, let's get some victory buffs after every win for the Detroit Pistons.
Please. I want 10% if they do it. I want 10% in free pizza if they make it happen. Let's go.
Man, those Little Caesar pizzas at LCA get kind of pricey. And I ain't gonna lie, man.
Oh my goodness, you ain't lying, man. It's too much.
I don't know what they put in them, but they're 10 times better than the Little Caesar pizza you get on the street. I don't know what it is. It just tastes better.
Helps us get through these kind of games. I'll tell you that much.
100%. So JB also was asked a question, and last year we saw a lot of Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, two big lineups. And he wouldn't say if he was going to use the two big lineups. Do you think that that is kind of the right direction to go towards now that they did sign Tobias Harris, which a lot of fans are speculating he could be the starting power forward for this team?
Yeah, I think that makes way more sense than starting him and Paul Reed or him and Beef Stew. Like, yeah, I think that kind of makes more sense because they need to play. Again, we keep speaking of their strengths. This is a athletic team. This is a team that is versatile in terms of positions that they can play, and you now have shooters. So if that's how you're going to want to play, you got to spread things out, especially when you have a big man like Jalen Duren that's going to occupy a lot of space in the middle. You don't want two guys kind of clogging that space. If you have a Jaden Ivey who's as fast as he is, you want him to have as much space as possible to get to the rack. I'm even like prone to the idea like they have not done this enough, and it drives me crazy. Post Cade Cunningham. He's 6'7", 230. He's their best post-up player, if you ask me. Like, he has the footwork that we saw in Oklahoma State, like the physicality, the intelligence, the ability to go up with up fakes. Like, he has that discipline in them. And if you run a two-big lineup, you can't put him on the block to take advantage of that. And there's not enough shooting, or even with the passing that they had. Like, I remember watching Cleveland. They did a lot of sets where they had Evan Mobley rolled to, like, the free throw line. It's like the elbow. He would catch it, and then they would have a cutter dart to the basket immediately. Or he would drop it off to a lob for Jared Allen. And, again, there's 2 7-footers. So he's dropping it off to somebody who poses a threat to be able to dunk the ball. You didn't have that with Beef Stew and Jalen Duren, who's 7 foot and then 6'7", maybe. Like, they didn't have that ability to take advantage of that. So he kind of spoke to it in his presser as well. I think James Edwards III asked him. He said he kind of did that based on what their roster was constructed as at the time. The Pistons don't necessarily have that right now. Play to your strengths and use what you have at your disposal. Your athleticism, your shooting, the versatility in scoring with Cade Cunningham. Take advantage of all that. And I don't think a two-big lineup will be able to unlock that kind of potential for the team.
It's kind of funny because, like, this isn't so much a JB Bickerstaff thing. It's something that the Detroit Pistons have been trying to do dating all the way back to Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond.
Yes.
Like, if you look at previous rosters, they've always tried to do this two big lineup thing. I mean, like even the Bad Boys did it a little bit, but I mean, you had Andre Drummond, Greg Monroe. Then you had an iteration where it did work with Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond when they were healthy. They didn't make the playoffs that year, but Blake did get injured. Then they're trying it now with Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. It kind of seems like it's not so much a coaching decision, it's an organization decision at the top that's kind of getting forced. And if you don't have that personnel, to your point, you don't have a stretch forward. Like I'll use a Lauri Markkanen, for example. You don't have a stretch big that can complement your center and complement everyone that's on the court. And then the lane is clogged. There's no spacing like we saw last year. I mean, there's screenshots of people on Twitter posting Cade, and there's like 5 people around him in the paint because there's no spacing. I honestly like that he would not commit to saying we're going to do a 2 big lineup, because obviously he said we only did that in Cleveland because I had the personnel to do so, saying we have bigs here, but I'm going to put them in positions to succeed. I'm going to put Duren on the block. I'm going to use him defensively. I'm going to put him 5 to 10 feet away from the basket. I'm not going to have him on the perimeter guarding guards. Thank God. Right. I honestly think that he does have a plan, but I kind of interested to see if this does get forced by the organization again, because we all know that there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You never really know what might get sent down to Trajan, then to JB, and so like, hey, like play 2 bigs.
I just think now at this point they're kind of seeing, and you kind of spoke to the cooks in the kitchen, they're at least like doing specific roles and responsibilities. It's not like when they brought in Monty and everybody had different opinions about like what needed to be done in terms of bringing him in. I think the guys that Trajan has around him are assigned to different roles, and it makes sense for what they're speaking to. If like, obviously this is projecting down the line, but if you had a Cooper Flagg as your 4, then it makes sense to kind of play a 2 big lineup, because he, like you said, he can dribble, create, and give you a different dynamic than you have. When you're bringing in Beef Stew and Jalen Duren, and you're playing them together, like I know there's the dog pound thing, and I know they got a good camaraderie together. You both are kind of, they're not repetitive offensively, but they're both limited offensively at this time. So because they don't have that ability to do different things, play different areas, like they're kind of just stuck in the same role. So hopefully they don't look at it as an organizational thing. Oh, we have to have 2 bigs because of what we did in the past. Nah, play to your strengths. And it's a different league anyway. Like we're seeing guys like play the 4 now that would have played the 3 10, 15 years ago. Like Fontecchio would have been a 3 full-time 15, 20 years ago. Tobias Harris would have been a 3 full-time 15, 20 years ago. Like now you're in a different position where you can kind of interchange those forwards and, you know, take advantage of the mismatches that you could prevent or create with pick and roll offense, with action away from the ball to kind of get them different looks. Now you can do that. You're not doing screen and rolls with, you know, with Beef Stew to like spot up or like flare out for an open 3 in the corner or off the wing. That's just not going to happen. So I just think they have a different opportunity and a different look to attack the things that are going to work for them instead of making them do things that work for them historically or with other teams. Like that's just not a good idea right now based on how the roster looks.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Trajan has full autonomy of what he wants to do with building a roster. We've seen it so far this year, and you know JB has a lot to say of what he wants to do, because you know I've been watching basketball since like the Grant Hill era, so I've seen all the 2 big stuff. I've seen what they've tried to do of recent years. I think the goal for this offseason, and I think they nailed it, was get perimeter spacing around your franchise player. Yep. And I think I could see Tobias Harris being the starting power forward. I could see maybe a Simone Fontecchio at the 3, because you want more spacing around Cade Cunningham. Maybe you put a star in there as like that lockdown defender and start, you know, Beasley at the 2. I don't know. I think there's a lot of, you know, creative ways that they can, you know, surround Cade with more perimeter spacing and not having a clogged lane, especially doing the 2 bigs. But found it really interesting that he would not actually commit or say that he's going to play 2 bigs, like we've seen over the past, you know, couple of years with the Pistons.
Yeah, the limited ability that they have, and again, we don't even talk about much at this point now, was Bojan, who was also playing the 3 and the 4. So even with his scoring prowess being as good as it was, he was a cone, and they tried to target him as much as possible defensively as a part of their game plans for defenses. Like he was just getting picked apart. Now you don't necessarily get to do that because Fontecchio is a very underrated defender. I even think Tobias Harris is a bit underrated. Like I don't think he's a lockdown guy, but he's better than what they had last season, especially when you partner that up with Duren, who hopefully is ascending in his defensive capabilities. It makes life a lot easier for those kind of guys to play defense around him and next to him. So I just think they're a lot more versatile with the things that they can do, but you're not going to try to bite off more than you can chew by doing a 2 big lineup. Stick to what works and then build from there.
I agree. So one of the other questions in his presser was asked about the backcourt. I think that's probably the $1 million question right now in the city. Like, what are you going to do? Wrong one. What are you going to do? I guess I did not upload. Oh, here we go. I don't even know what I did. Obviously, I was tired and I didn't make the right lower third. I'm going to have to remake it. Anyways, he basically said that he tried to stagger like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell while they were in Cleveland. So my question would be, can you see him doing that with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey?
Yeah, because Monty Williams didn't do it. I feel like his whole introductory presser was just sneak dissing at Monty Williams. Like, he's like, yeah, we actually do staggered lineups. Why didn't y'all do that? Yeah, we don't like doing all bench lineups because it doesn't work, especially for a young team. Why were y'all doing that? Like, great, that's not exactly what he said, but professionally, that's how it came across to me. It makes sense to have your best players, your best scoring threats on the floor as much as possible, especially when at this point, and even back to last season, Killian Hayes was your backup. Monty Morris was hurt, so they didn't really have the consistency in a Marcus Sasser, who was a rookie, as their backup point guard at this point. And even now with this season, Sasser could be that backup, but at the same time, you're still not trying to lean on him as the sole backup point guard for this team because he's not the best playmaker, not much of a defender, being undersized at this moment. So it helps to have the ability to have Jaden Ivey in the backcourt with them at the same time and then have veterans sprinkled in together with that. So, like, I just think they're in a position now where they can use the athleticism of the guards, like with the bench lineup and with the starters as well. I also like when he said, like, I like the idea of having Cade, like, bringing the ball off a rebound and then throwing a quick outlet pass to Jaden Ivey, where he's going to be in transition and putting pressure on the opposing defenders. So where even if he doesn't score in transition, he's going to make you foul him. I think Jaden Ivey is the best player on the roster in terms of creating contact against his defenders. His speed helps him do that. He's a lot bigger and stronger than people give him credit for and realize. So I just think JB Bickerstaff sees that, and I love that he's directly speaking to it. Again, we're talking about how Dwayne Casey about to talk about, oh, the character of the kids. Oh, the character of the kids. Bro, can you talk about basketball, please? And JB was directly doing that. And he's speaking to the absolute, like, impacts and the strengths that they have. And I think we're going to see those on high display.
I love the fact that he said, let's say Cade has the ball up court and Jaden Ivey's running in transition. Cade could throw an outlet pass to Jaden Ivey, and Jaden Ivey is just such a threat. One, because he's just a fast athlete, and as in the transition game, I think he's him and Asar are probably the two. You could probably throw Bobby Clipman in there now. Those three are just going to be a nightmare in transition because they run the floor so hard. And I think JB knows that, and he understands that Jaden Ivey is just a blur in the open court and in transition. And I think he has a plan. He even said, like, maybe I play Cade off ball and Jaden Ivey has the ball in his hands. Maybe, Jaden Ivey, he wants to use him more of like a catch and shoot type of thing, because we saw last year, before the All-Star break and before he talked to Benedict Mathurin, he was shooting the lights out, man. He was shooting like close to 40% from three. I don't know what Benedict Mathurin did to him, but after that, he just could not shoot. I don't know if it's what he said to him or what, but like he had a really a bad March from shooting the 3-point shot. But I think with him, it's just consistency and, working with Fred Vincent. I know you had mentioned it earlier. I think is going to be really crucial for him, because if he becomes this like 35% from three, league average at least, I think you have a starting two guard next to Cade Cunningham that can work together, because the discourse with them right now among Pistons fans is Jaden Ivey's a poor fit for Cade Cunningham. Jaden Ivey needs the ball in his hands to be effective. I think there's a lot of different ways Jaden Ivey can facilitate a game and how you can use him as his effectiveness of the game. I don't really think he needs the ball in his hands 100% of the time to be happy playing on the court with Cade Cunningham.
Ivy spoke to it during media day last season. He said, I really didn't play point guard that much when I was at Purdue. I was off the ball. They moved me around a lot, and that's what I was most comfortable doing. Monty, again, this is turning into a Monty like this episode, but it really just blew my mind of how still he kept those guys. Even you spoke to Asar and the speed that he has, how they were not finding ways to keep them active and moving off the ball, like finding ways to get them open looks in the paint, finding ways to get them just open opportunities. It just seemed like everybody was standing still in the corner, and he just played two-man ball with Cade and Jalen Duren at the top, and then they were hoping that they could pull something off after that. Like, it just drove me crazy with that. So, yeah, I think JB has a plan in mind, and he's speaking to it directly. Like, the staggering is going to work. It should work, I should say. And we're already seeing, like, a lot of people are projecting what the starting lineups could be because of what you said. Oh, people are thinking that Ivy's already a bad fit. I don't think we have that answer yet. We've seen it work, and we've seen it not work. They both had, a 30-point performance, I think, against the Trailblazers on the road. There were other games where they both shined together. They both talked highly of each other constantly in their ability to play with one another. So I just don't think we've seen the potential unlocked, and I don't think we've seen enough of them together, whether it's through the injuries that they've had, the bad rosters that they've had set up, starting Killian Hayes and not even letting Jaden Ivey get fourth quarter minutes. Like, we just didn't get to see enough to definitively know if Ivy and Cade can work. We've seen it work in spurts, and I think they need to take more time to figure it out with JB Bickerstaff.
Yeah, I think to your point, they were like standstill, like standing in the corner, or like the offense last year was very elementary. Like,
yes,
I cover a lot of high school basketball, and the sets that I saw in high school, there were more, plans. Like, if plan A didn't work, they would go to plan B. With the Pistons, it seemed like very elementary. Give the ball to Cade for 15 seconds. If there's nothing there, take a mid-range jumper. Like, there's no creativity. There's no ball movement. There's no player movement. Very little pick and rolls. It's just like, I don't know if the coaching staff didn't fully trust the players to execute a play. Maybe they couldn't understand the play. And Trajan kind of talked about it in his presser, saying like, yeah, you guys had a lot of low IQ players last year. And I don't know if that was a sneak diss to any of the players that were on the roster last year, but obviously he felt like he needed to get more high IQ basketball players. So, the Pistons don't win another 14 games. But I honestly think with the Cade and Ivy stuff, I think they can work together. I've been really high on Ivy. I just think the way they've used him, the past 2 years, and his role, I think is, if you talk about Jaden Ivey and you talk about how his role has changed from being with Cade his rookie year, being a second option, to being the lead point guard, then Monty comes in saying, okay, well, you're going to come off the bench. Then you get 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then you got the guy that was the 7th overall pick that's no longer in the NBA, not even on a roster, starting above you. And then, oh yeah, now we're going to be playing you as a starting 2 guard because Tom Gores and Troy Weaver had to talk to me that they want to see you play more. And then, like, 1 minute you're playing 25 minutes, next minute you're playing 6. Like, I feel so bad for him because he's had no direction, and he cannot really like get a clear path role to what to be expected out of him. He's just had such a roller coaster his first 2 seasons in the league, and I absolutely feel bad for the kid.
I gotta shout out his father. Shout out to Javen Hunter, who spoke about the professionalism of his son. Because again, like you said, dealing with all he had to deal with, all the changes, coming off the bench last second, like nobody expected that at all to be a thing. And then it kind of just happened. And Ivy's professionalism and his ability to adapt and just kind of just roll with the punches and earn his time and force the hand of Monty to make a change, I think deserves way more credit than it does. And I feel like JB Bickerstaff has the IQ to understand that he needs to be used in different ways. Something that he did in Cleveland that I just absolutely loved that they did. It was so unique. It was so different. They used to play a defense where they played a zone. It was 3-2. They played the wings at the top, and Evan Mobley was at the top of that defense. And then you would have the 2 forwards, or a forward, and then Jared Allen at the back to help protect the rim. Mobley, with his length, to kind of throw off and be athletic enough to like draw some like confusion against his opponents because of his athleticism that he provides. It opened the ability for them to throw dangerous passes and create turnovers against their opponents. That's just thinking outside the box. All right, I got this length, I got this size, I got speed, I got some youth with these players. Let me find the best way to use it, because if I just put Darius Garland on an island, he's going to get chewed apart. Donovan Mitchell's not really a defender that much either. So I have to find something different to take advantage of what's in front of me. I think he's going to apply that same kind of thinking offensively. Like I loved seeing that with Cleveland, and I think he's going to bring that same kind of brilliance to the Pistons. Like he has to be able to be creative enough and kind of think offhand enough to make things work. I think he's smart enough to make that happen.
Yeah, same here. I think if you watch some film of Cavs games, you can probably get excited of like just the creative offensive sets that JB might try to run with the Pistons, because I love Darius Garland. I like Donovan Mitchell. But, Cade Cunningham is 6'8", Jaden Ivey's 6'5".
Yes.
You have a taller backcourt, and you have two defenders in Asar Thompson and Ron Holland on your basketball team that you can kind of like draw parallels to Isaac Okoro, where, maybe those guys like take on that Isaac Okoro role. Obviously, you don't have that Jared Allen yet, but who knows? With the way that they developed in Cleveland and you saw progression, maybe Duren could be that Jared Allen. Maybe it's Paul Reed. Maybe it's Isaiah Stewart. Who knows? But I think there's a lot to like with him just as a coach, because to your point, he's not talking about making the bed. He's not talking about getting back on the horse. Or Dwayne Casey has some all-time quotes. If you guys ever get bored, just try to read some Dwayne Casey quotes, because like they're just like it's a lot of Southern talk. And if you're not from the South, you probably don't understand it or get it, but it's absolutely hilarious. One of the final questions that I did want to get into with the JB Bickerstaff presser was, what was your takeaway with the timeline question? Because he said by February, March, you would see Detroit Pistons basketball. And I knew as soon as he said that they were going to try to bait him. Fox 2 did it twice.
Yep.
Because the way I saw it, it was like, they're like, oh, they're going to be playing like the 04 Pistons. Like, that's the way I thought of it. Like when, they were kind of trying to retract the question and ask him like, hey, like, what do you mean by that? Like, does that mean playoffs? Does that mean like a timeline? Like how quickly do you want to accelerate this? What was your takeaway with him saying that they want to get back to, it's going to take February, March for you to notice a clear identity with this team?
I'm okay with it, because Troy Weaver tried saying the same thing last season. He said, we want to play competitive basketball until the end of April. He said, we don't want the season to be mailed in by December, and we know how that went. So I like that they're at least coming up with, again, so it kind of goes into what we talked about before. You don't want to rush a timeline, but you're also speaking to other things that let you know that things are changing, having fun, having a team identity to build on, like having different things to pay attention to besides the win-loss column and the playoff rankings. Like, we shouldn't be worried about that right now as Pistons followers. So I love that he said that. It kind of echoes what Trajan Langdon said. They both basically said the same thing. It's not a specific timeline on getting back to the playoffs, but we're not trying to do the same thing that y'all have been doing these past few seasons either. We're going to get pieces in that can still slow cook the development, but also show that we're taking steps to getting there as well. Because if, again, another great quote, I believe, from Dwayne Casey that he said was, the best way to lose is by playing a bunch of young guys on the floor at the same time. So while the focus of the franchise is still developing that young core, you have older players to kind of help push that in a different direction. We saw how that worked with the Houston Rockets. We saw how much that young core benefited having Fred VanVleet, even Dylan Brooks, who I'm not a huge fan of, but you see the value that he brings defensively when you have other young guys who are trying to learn the simple X's and O's of how to get better as a player and play winning basketball. So, like, I just think the plan is been communicated from the front office to the coaching staff, and I think it's going to be reflected with the players too. They're all kind of echoing the same sentiments. They're coming up with ideas. They're talking about exact specific plans in order to get to where they're trying to go. But they're just saying, hey, be patient while we get there. We're going to do different things, but it's going to take a minute to get there. I appreciate seeing that, and it's being backed up with the action that they're giving as well. He's not just giving you lip service. They're giving you veterans, getting Fred Vincent as the coach, adding pieces to help develop long-term and in the short term as well. I think the the words that they're putting out there are matching with their actions, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, so many times, so many regimes kind of fluff you, give you a good soundbite, and kind of reel you back in. Trajan, for what it's worth, and I know this is actually about JB, but Trajan told you that, I want to use some of the cap space to maybe get a veteran if we can get some draft capital. What's he do? Right. He trades for Tim Hardaway Jr. and gets 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
He said he wanted to add more veterans. He did that. And I think JB and him are on the same wavelength in terms of we want to get better, but we're not here to tell the fans we're going to win 40 games and push for the playoffs.
Right.
If we make the play-in, then that's success in itself. But our main goal is to keep developing the young core that we do have. And if wins come along the way, then that's good for the fan base. But our main focus is getting these guys better each and every day, building and establishing a culture that these kids that we've drafted, 5th overall over the past couple of years, want to be here. We want players to want to come here. We want, veterans to want to come here. I think the one thing that I noticed, I know it's completely off topic, all the social media posts that the Detroit Pistons have been taking of them signing the contracts, all those veteran players, even, Cade signing his extension, the vibes feel different, man. It feels more positive. It feels more energetic. The players seem like, okay, like these guys get it. They're bought in. No more of the stuff that we were going through last year. It seems like, Trajan and JB, they're all, positive, energetic, and want to get this back on track.
Which is why I'm very happy that they didn't take a swing for a guy like Brandon Ingram, which is why I'm happy that they didn't. I wrote a piece about it on ClutchPoints. Like, the best offseason moves that they did was not getting rid of any pieces of the young core just yet. Because, again, I don't think we've answered the questions of whether they fit together or not. And there's still a world where it exists where if they do develop into what we think they can be based on the strengths that they have, it can work. Because, again, I don't think you have to rush the offensive prowess right now of Asar Thompson. But if it gets there, it now speeds up where they're trying to go. If you trade for a Zach LaVine at this point and you kind of kick the bucket with, the development plan that you were going with, it now accelerates that expectation. And, I mean, heaven forbid, if you do make a play for a guy like Zach LaVine and history repeats itself and he gets hurt, you just now kicked away your assets and some of your building blocks for a guy that's not even there anymore. Oh, wait, and you still got to pay him all that money that he's owed. So I like that they're taking the patient approach while also doing different things to grow that development at a organized and a substantial pace instead of just going right at it. Okay, hey, we're going for him. We're going for a Kuzma or like any of those kind of guys. Like, I'm happy that they didn't do that because it would have pushed things in a different direction in terms of expectation, and they don't need to be looking that far ahead yet. Focus on the young guys because, again, even bringing in those kind of guys, the Pistons aren't going to get to where they want to go without Cade Cunningham becoming the star that we think he can be, without Jaden Ivey becoming that complimentary scorer who maybe could be your leading scorer at a point if things work out. Who knows? But again, like you said, the main focus has to be the development of those young pieces because they're going to be the ones that carry you to where they're trying to go, not the veterans that you bring in at the last second, not the guys that you're trading in for. Now, at this point, coming off of a 14-win season, take your time, build a plan, build the young talent, and make things work for the long term.
Yeah, I think like his message to the media and the fans is, by the time it's February or March, you're going to see a team that's selfless, a team that can play together. He had a really good interview with 7 Action News talking about like what he meant by that, of just talking about how he wants this to be selfless, kind of like how the 04 Pistons were in terms of like everyone fought for each other. We're all diving for loose balls. There's no one individual that's going to get all the accolades, all the glory. Like, this is a team sport, and we're going to be for each other, which I absolutely loved him saying that because I think that really resonates with the fans. But I honestly think that just everything through his presser, I'm a fan of it. I honestly am. Even his interview with 97 Won the Ticket, they asked him a lot of hard questions, and he answered them all flawlessly.
Yes, and we're seeing that like selflessness reflected with the team. Like, even though Cade's a good ISO player, I think his biggest and best strength is his passing. I feel like Ivy, like we just said, he's not a guy that's thinking, oh my God, well, I just did this my rookie year and now I got to play second fiddle to Cade. Like, I think he's okay with that. Like, these guys are openly speaking to what the pecking order is. Jalen Duren has called Cade the franchise player. Like, I think the selflessness of the team is being reflected. And then even when we talk about Summer League with guys like Clintman, who are doing things like making the extra pass, giving that second effort, doing things that show that you're trying to sacrifice and build for the team, not just how can I get 15 shots up. If you trade for if you sign a Malik Monk to come to this team, you know he's going to start playing like J.R. Smith, and that's going to just muddy the development of this roster. So I think the pecking order and the plan of the organization is getting clear. I'm excited to see what it looks like on the floor, but based on everything that we're hearing from leadership down, I think everybody's kind of in line with what the next steps are moving forward and how they can clean up the mess from what we saw last season.
I agree. I do have like one more little question.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to give me your starting five prediction
of who I think the starting five will be or who it should be.
Who you think it'll be?
Who I think it will be? Okay. Cade is an obvious. Duren is an obvious. I don't think they're going to – I've seen a lot of people say Malik Beasley makes a lot of sense as your two. But, again, if you're going to stagger, he doesn't have to start. He can still play 20 minutes coming off the bench. I think Ivy starts. I think that's the starting backcourt. I think it's Cade, Ivy, Duren. Tobias, I think, is going to start. And I think Fontecchio rounds out that front court. I think Fontecchio, to me, he was their second best player last season. He was fantastic in terms of what he did coming away from Utah. And based on the way he's able to spread the floor, based on the way he's able to, he doesn't play around with this dribble. He even has the ability to kind of get to the rack and put it on the floor as well. He's very, very versatile. And I think he still offers enough of what they're looking for to complement them defensively as well as offensively. It may be a little different because, again, while they're not great defenders, they're also they're not great defenders, but they're veteran savvy enough where they'll be able to still help the other young guys grow as the defenders that they are on the team. So I got Cade, Ivy, Tobias, Fontecchio, and Duren as the starting five to start the season. What you think?
Okay. I was kind of on the same wavelength, and I've kind of gone back and forth with it. Like, obviously, Cade at point guard, Ivy at shooting guard. I've seen the talk about Tim Hardaway Jr. I've seen the talk about Malik Beasley. I think some people, they look at the three-point percentage with Malik Beasley, but Malik Beasley isn't really – I don't want to say he's a poor defender, but I'll say he's an average defender. He's an average defender, but I don't really think that would – mean he's going to be the two guard next to Cade Cunningham. I think they would obviously like to use him in more of a reserve role off the bench to kind of have more of that firepower with the second unit. Right. So I think I would probably have Ivy at the two. At the three, this is where I go back and forth. Fontecchio, to your point, hell of a player, was the second best player when they did trade for him. But I think they go Asar. I think Asar is going to be at the small forward position, just because you're going to need some defense out there, in my opinion anyways. And I think what I saw from Asar last year when he was playing, hell of a defender. Obviously, the one thing with him that everyone watching and listening, we all know that his offensive game is still a work in progress. But I think what JB will probably do is use him in that Isaac Okoro role. Because I think when I look at an Asar and I look at an Isaac, I think Asar, obviously, I think defensively is a little bit ahead of Isaac Okoro, in my opinion. I think he's just so advanced as a defender that you can get away with putting him in the starting lineup and kind of just having him switch with Ivy so Ivy doesn't get attacked. So you can kind of just have like Asar, pick up Ivy if he needs it. So I have a Asar at the three. At the four, I have Tobias. I think that it just makes too much sense to have a floor spacer at the power forward position, a guy that can score on all three levels. Makes sense. And obviously, Duren at the five. I think we kind of have different opinions at the three. The other reason why I had Asar at small forward is just for defense. I could totally see them just having basically four floor spacers out there with Cade Cunningham, so the lane isn't clogged, and you just have perimeter spacing around him. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with the remainder of their cap space. What they do? Do they
Right.
add more? I know a lot of people in the chat were asking about Tyus Jones, Gary Trent
Yeah.
Jr. Like there's a lot of guys out there that I think a lot of Pistons fans are locked in on, and I really don't know what they're going to do with the remainder of their cap space.
Yeah, it's a lot of options that they still have left, and the beauty of it is at this point is even if like I agree with you on Beasley, I wanted him as a free agent, but as a guy that comes off the bench, and I like the Tim Hardaway acquisition as well. The beauty of it is if those guys did step in and start, they're not going to be playing 30 plus minutes. They're not going to be taking, I don't think, like the majority of fourth quarter minutes away from Jaden Ivey. And if he were to be in that role, it would make way more sense in terms of what they're trying to do. So if they are in a position where Ivy's jumper isn't still coming together and they need to get some more shooting around Cade, and you want to put Tim Hardaway Jr. in there, it makes sense because Ivy can still build off the bench, play some staggered minutes with the starting lineup, and still see his development, see an uptick in terms of what the expectations have been. So it makes way more sense than what they did play Killian Hayes or Isaiah Livers 30 plus minutes last season. Now you at least have guys who, again, even if they start, I don't think they're going to be relying on them for those kind of minutes and those kind of stretches. They're still going to focus on developing the young guys, and I still think we can find the best fits in terms of how they mix and match the rotations. It's going to take some time, but to start off, I do think they're going to go with that backcourt. And again, I'm not even going to disagree with you. I do see a world where Asar could start just for those defensive purposes. Like I don't, while it is important for JB's plan of making Cade a great two-way player, I don't want him guarding one of the two best scorers on the opposing team because if he's in foul trouble, Cade's got to sit, and that's a problem. You don't want to do that. So I could see Asar playing. It is going to put a little bit more pressure on him, and it's going to put more pressure on JB to get more creative in offensive sets instead of just burying him in the corner. So it makes sense, and I would be totally fine with it if that's what he went with.
I'll say this, like it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if Tim Hardaway starts. It just wouldn't, like kind of given he's in a contract year, given he's a guy that was kind of a sixth man with Dallas, but he was still one of I think he was their third leading scorer behind Kyrie, and Luka still averaged like 14, 15 points a game. Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever because I know some people in the chat saying like you can't start Ivy and Asar in the starting lineup because Ivy's inconsistent. I think it's really early in these conversations. I know fans have a lot of opinions. They're really passionate about it, but like I said, it's just a little fun conversation, you guys. Nothing to get upset over, but I know some people are right now they're getting upset in the chat over it.
They riled up in the chat. They riled up right now.
Yeah, because I put Ivy and Asar in the starting lineup. Yeah. Like, oh, didn't you watch last year? Didn't you learn? I was like, yeah, I watched, but I mean, Say Livers was there and Killian Hayes was kind of in there too. So chill out.
There's a lot to deal with in terms of last season, but yeah, based on any direction they go, they're set up to where at least the acquisition or the moves that they make sense. Everybody was scratching their heads like, all right, you want to take Ivy off the bench, but Killian Hayes is the starter next to him? I don't know. And then even with Alec Burks, who was a cone on defense, and he kind of got sporadic offensively, like they just did a bunch of stuff that didn't make sense. They're now put in positions, like for me, I'm a wrestling fan. Like what they do, like storylines and stuff, just do stuff that makes sense. They're at least put in a position now that makes sense, and I can't be mad at that.
You know what? I've had so many people on here that are diehard wrestling fans. Like we had Zarek on a couple of weeks ago, big WWE fan.
Love Zar. That's my guy. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Zarek's the best. Had Corey Woods on. Huge wrestling fan. Like,
yeah.
Shout out to Corey, man.
It's a good time to be a WWE fan. Absolutely.
It's so funny when I used to work with Corey at Woodward Sports, and I told him when I stopped watching wrestling, because I stopped watching wrestling when Roman Reigns wasn't a heel, when he was kind of just like face. He's like, bro, you stopped watching at the worst time. I was like, dude, like I couldn't do it anymore. It was the same old shit that they were like recycling for 20 years.
Yeah, it was nasty. But then he finally gets into a role that makes sense, brings in his family with the Usos, and again, it was just stuff that made sense, trying to turn him into John Cena. Like, again, you don't have to do the home run thing. Just give me something that makes sense. And everything that not everything, but a lot of what Triple H and the booking are doing right now makes complete sense. And I'm just loving it.
It's so funny. Czar actually compared Trajan to Triple H.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up the clip. He was like, well, if you kind of look at like WWE and how everything is like related to wrestling, Trajan can be like Triple H when he took over NXT. And I was just like, Czar, dude, you're like going like super WWE at me, man. Love it. Let's do it.
I gotta talk to Czar about that. I gotta hear his take on that.
You definitely text him after the show because I vividly remember him saying this was like, yeah, Trajan could be like that, Triple H to, rebuild the Pistons. I was like, bro, I love you. That's awesome.
I see the vision. I see it.
But before we do wrap up this podcast, I do want to give you the floor again to promote anything you're working on, where people can follow you and all that stuff.
Man, I really appreciate the time, Anthony, man. This is really cool. I've been a fan of yours for a while. I'm super happy to be here. Everybody who's tuned in, appreciate y'all, man. Follow me on all my social medias at I am Eric Vincent. Again, I'm a beat reporter for ClutchPoints. You can check all my work there. I post as much as I can in groups and all over social media. Tune in to AM 1270 Sports Rap Radio. You can listen to us online now, stream. You don't have to worry about the static. You can check us out at sportsrapradioddetroit.com. I'm on every Sunday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Tune in, tap in with me. We talk a lot of Pistons, a lot of Lions, all Detroit, everything. Man, it's been a blast. I really enjoyed my time there, and we're going to keep growing and making that thing special. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate the support, and, man, thank you for giving me this platform, man. It means a lot.
No problem, man. I do have your Twitter linked in the description on YouTube, so people can just go in my description, click your link to Twitter, give you a follow, get those follows up. You're a good Pistons follow. There's just so many people in the Detroit Pistons community. I absolutely love it. I honestly think Pistons Twitter is so I think it's bigger than like a lot of people realize. There's so many great content creators, beat writers. Like I absolutely love just like the media side, the fan side, like the content creators. There's just so many great people out there. But do appreciate we have 900 people in here right now watching us on a Sunday at 9:00. That's dedication to you guys. Appreciate everyone watching. We will see you guys next Sunday. Peace.